They threw her out like garbage. Ilara Vance was the rejected Omega of the Silver Creek Pack, mocked, abused, and finally exiled to the frozen dead zone to die alone. Her only companion, a scruffy, injured wolf pup, she found shivering in the snow. For 3 months she starved herself just to feed him, unaware that the little runt watching her with intelligent violet eyes wasn't a dog, and he wasn't a regular wolf. He was a king in hiding. And when 4 massive black SUVs and a pack of royal guards surrounded her cabin, Ilara thought she was about to die. She didn't know she was about to become the most powerful woman in the world. The wind in the whispering woods didn't just blow, it screamed. It was a sound that Ilara Vance had become intimate with over the last 6 months. It was the sound of loneliness, the sound of a death sentence carried out in slow motion. Ilara adjusted the strap of her worn canvas bag, her boots crunching heavily through the crust of hard-packed snow. Her breath misted in the air, freezing almost instantly on her eyelashes. She was 22 years old, but if you looked at her hands, chapped red and scarred from chopping wood, you'd think she had lived a dozen lifetimes of hard labor. She was an Omega. In the hierarchy of the Silver Creek Pack, that meant she was the bottom of the barrel. But Ilara wasn't just an Omega, she was a wolfless Omega. She had never shifted. When she turned 18 and her wolf failed to emerge, her fate was sealed. Alpha Damon Sterling, a man whose cruelty was matched only by his vanity, hadn't just ignored her. He had made an example of her. "We do not feed parasites." Damon had sneered 6 months ago, standing on the mahogany porch of the pack house while Ilara knelt in the mud. "You are a waste of resources, Ilara. You can't hunt. You can't fight. You can't even shift. Leave my territory, or I will have the enforcers hunt you for sport." So she had left. She had found a dilapidated hunter's cabin in the dead zone, a strip of neutral, lawless land between the Silver Creek territory and the vast, dangerous borders of the northern Lichen Kingdom. Ilara reached the edge of the clearing where her cabin stood. It was a sad little shack, the roof sagging under the weight of the snow, but smoke was curling from the chimney. It was the only reason she was still alive. "I'm home," she whispered to no one. She climbed the creaking steps and pushed open the door. The heat inside was meager, but it was better than the biting frost outside. She dropped her bag on the rough-hewn table. Inside was her prize for the day, 2 scrawny rabbits she had managed to snare. It wasn't much, but it would last her 3 days if she was careful. She began to skin the first rabbit, her movements practiced and efficient. As she worked, a soft scratching sound came from the door. Ilara froze. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Strays didn't come here. Rogues did. And rogues didn't scratch. They smashed. She grabbed the rusted iron poker from the fireplace and crept toward the door. She cracked it open an inch, ready to fight for her life. She looked down. There, shivering violently in the snow, was a ball of muddy fur. It was a wolf pup, or perhaps a very small, malnourished dog. Its fur was matted with dried blood and burrs, and one of its ears was torn. But it was the eyes that caught her. They weren't the yellow or amber of a normal wolf. They were a deep, striking violet. The creature looked up at her and let out a pathetic wheezing whine. It collapsed onto its side, too weak to stand. Ilara's grip on the poker loosened. She knew she should shut the door. Nature was cruel. The weak died. That was the law Alpha Damon had taught her. But Ilara wasn't Damon. "Oh, you poor little thing," she murmured. She dropped the poker and scooped the animal up. He was shockingly light, nothing but bones under the matted fur. He didn't growl, didn't bite. He just leaned his cold head against her chest, letting out a sigh that sounded almost human. She brought him inside and laid him on the rug near the fire. "I don't have much," she told the unconscious ball of fur as she went back to the rabbit. "But I guess nobody deserves to die in the snow." That night, Elara cooked the rabbit. She ate the gristly parts and the broth. The best meat, the tender thigh muscle, she shredded onto a wooden plate and set before the pup. He woke up as the smell hit him. Those violet eyes snapped open, sharp and intelligent. He looked at the meat, then up at Elara. "Eat," she urged softly. "It's okay." He ate with a dignity that surprised her. He didn't bolt it down like a starving animal. He chewed deliberately, his eyes never leaving her face. "I'm Elara," she whispered, reaching out to touch his head. He flinched, then slowly leaned into her palm. "I guess we're both outcasts now, huh?" She named him Shadow. 2 months passed. Winter in the dead zone was relentless. The snow piled higher against the cabin walls, turning Elara's world into a claustrophobic white prison. Life with Shadow was different. He wasn't like any dog she had ever known. He never barked. He never chewed the furniture. He simply watched her. He would sit by the fire, his violet eyes tracking her every movement as she patched her clothes, chopped wood, or read the few tattered books she had brought with her. Sometimes when she cried, usually at night when the memories of her family abandoning her became too much, Shadow would limp over to her bed. He would place his front paws on her mattress and press his forehead against hers, a low, soothing rumble vibrating in his chest. It wasn't a growl. It was a purr. "You're a strange wolf, Shadow," she told him one evening. She was sitting on the floor sharing a tin of beans with him. Food was getting scarce. She had barely eaten in 2 days, giving the bulk of her scavenged food to him. He was healing, growing larger and stronger, his coat turning from a muddy brown to a sleek midnight black. Shadow nudged the plate of beans back toward her with his nose. Elara laughed, a dry, brittle sound. "I'm not hungry, buddy. You need it. You're still growing." Shadow let out a huff of annoyance, a distinctly human sound, and refused to eat until she took a bite. "Stubborn," she muttered, swallowing a spoonful. "Just like me." The peace of their isolation was broken 3 days later. Elara was outside, hacking away at a frozen log when the wind shifted. The scent hit her instantly. It was a smell she hadn't encountered in months. Alpha. High-octane gasoline, expensive cologne, and the musk of aggressive wolves. She dropped the axe and spun around. Her heart stopped. Standing at the edge of the clearing, leaning against a silver Range Rover, was Alpha Damon Sterling. He was flanked by his beta Marcus and 2 enforcers. They weren't in the dead zone by accident. They had tracked her. Well, Damon drawled his voice, carrying easily over the snow. He wore a heavy fur coat that probably cost more than Elara's entire life. "Look at this, Marcus. The rat managed to build a nest." Elara's hands shook. She backed up toward the cabin door. "What do you want, Damon? I'm off your land. I'm in the dead zone." "The dead zone is expanding." Damon smirked, pushing off the car. He began to walk toward her, the snow crunching under his designer boots. "We're claiming this territory for Silver Creek, expanding our borders. And you know the rules, Elara. No rogues allowed on Packland." "I'm not a rogue," Elara shouted, her voice cracking. "You exiled me. I have nowhere else to go." "Not my problem," Damon sneered. He stopped 10 feet from her. His eyes flashed red. "You're an eyesore, a genetic failure. I thought the winter would kill you, but you're like a cockroach, hard to stomp out." Marcus chuckled darkly. "Want me to handle it?" "Alpha." Damon nodded. "Burn the cabin. If she runs, let the boys hunt her." Elara gasped, turning to grab the door handle. She had to get Shadow. She had to run. But before she could move, a low, thunderous sound vibrated through the clearing. It was deep enough to rattle Ilara's teeth. The cabin door flew open. Shadow didn't walk out. He stalked out. But he wasn't the small, injured pup anymore. In the adrenaline of the moment, he seemed to swell his black fur standing on end. His lips pulled back to reveal teeth that looked like white daggers. He stood in front of Ilara, placing himself directly between her and the alpha. Damon laughed. "A pet, you kept a pet. Marcus, kill the mutt first." Marcus shifted. His bones cracked and reshaped, and seconds later, a large grey wolf stood in his place. He lunged for Shadow. Ilara screamed, "No!" But Shadow didn't flinch. As the grey wolf midair lunged, Shadow moved with a speed that was physically impossible. He sidestepped, snapped his jaws and caught Marcus by the throat. With a savage shake of his head, Shadow threw the 200-pound beta wolf across the clearing. Marcus hit a tree with a sickening crack and didn't get up. Silence descended on the clearing. Damon's smirk vanished. He stared at the black wolf. Shadow stood his ground, his violet eyes glowing with a terrifying intensity. He let out a roar, not a bark, a roar that echoed like a gunshot. "Get out!" It wasn't spoken, but the projection of dominance was so strong, it hit Ilara like a physical wave. It was an alpha command, but stronger. Much stronger. Damon turned pale. He recognized power when he saw it. He didn't know what this wolf was, but he knew his beta was down, and this creature was lethal. "This isn't over, Ilara." Damon spat, backing away toward his car. "You think a stray dog can protect you forever? I'll be back with the whole pack." He dragged the unconscious Marcus into the car and sped off, tires spinning in the snow. Ilara sank to her knees, trembling. Shadow turned to her. The ferocity vanished from his eyes, replaced by concern. He licked the tears freezing on her cheeks. "You saved me," she whispered, burying her face in his neck. "Who are you, Shadow?" The next morning, the atmosphere in the woods had changed. The birds weren't singing. The wind had died down. It was the calm before a storm. Ilara was packing. She knew Damon wasn't making an idle threat. He would come back, and he would bring 20 wolves. Shadow was strong, unnaturally strong, but he couldn't fight a whole pack alone. "We have to go north," Ilara told Shadow, who was sitting by the door, his ears pricked up. "Into the mountains. The Lycan Kingdom borders are there. Damon won't cross the Lycan King's borders. It's suicide." Shadow whined, pacing back and forth. He kept looking out the window. "I know," Ilara sighed. "I'm scared too." Around noon the sound returned. Engines. Ilara froze a pair of socks in her hand. "He's back already." She grabbed her bag and the iron poker, her only weapon, and ran to the window. Her breath hitched. It wasn't Damon's silver Range Rover. Pulling into the clearing were 4 massive matte black armored SUVs. They looked like military vehicles. They bore no license plates, only a silver crest embossed on the doors, a wolf's head crowned with thorns. Ilara's blood ran cold. The Royal Guard. The stories of the Lycan King were terrifying. King Killian Blackwood was said to be a monster of war, a man who had slaughtered thousands to secure his throne. His guards, the Obsidian Guard, were executioners. "Why are they here?" Ilara whispered, terror gripping her throat. Had she trespassed? Was the dead zone actually royal land? The doors of the SUVs opened in unison. 12 men stepped out. They were giants, all over 6'5", wearing black tactical gear. They didn't look like the ragtag enforcers of the Silver Creek Pack. These men moved with lethal precision. They formed a semicircle around the cabin. Ilara backed away from the window. "Shadow hide," she hissed. "Under the bed." Now. But Shadow didn't hide. He walked to the door and scratched to be let out. "No! Are you crazy?" Ilara grabbed his collar. "They'll kill you. They'll kill us both." Shadow looked at her. For a second, Ilara swore she saw an apology in those violet eyes. Then he easily broke her grip and nudged the latch with his nose. The door swung open. "Shadow!" Ilara screamed, diving after him. She stumbled onto the porch, clutching the iron poker ready to swing at the first man who touched her wolf. "Don't shoot!" she screamed, shielding Shadow's body with her own. She stared at the 12-armed men, her heart hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs. "He's just a dog. Take whatever you want, just don't hurt him." The leader of the men stepped forward. He was a towering figure with a scar running down his left eye. He looked at Ilara, then his gaze lowered to the black wolf, standing calmly between her legs. Ilara squeezed her eyes shut, waiting for the bullet. "Company, halt!" the leader barked. Then the impossible happened. The leader dropped to one knee. Simultaneously, the other 11 men dropped to their knees, bowing their heads low into the snow. The silence was deafening. Ilara lowered the poker confusion, warring with fear. What are you doing?" The leader didn't look at her. He looked at the wolf. "Your Majesty," the leader said, his voice trembling with reverence. "We have searched for 6 months. The kingdom has been in mourning." Ilara looked down at Shadow. "Your Majesty Uhur." Shadow stepped away from Ilara. He walked into the center of the clearing. He looked back at Ilara one last time, his gaze intense, possessive and reassuring. Then the sound of bones cracking filled the air. It wasn't the grotesque, painful sound of a normal shift. It was fluid, powerful. The black fur receded. The snout shortened. The paws became hands. In the place of the wolf stood a man. He was naked, steaming in the cold air, but he stood with an arrogance that made the nudity irrelevant. He was tall, powerfully built, with corded muscle, his skin scarred from battles. His hair was as black as the wolf's fur, hanging wetly around his face. But it was the eyes. Those same violet eyes. Ilara dropped the poker. It clattered loudly on the wooden porch. The man, the king, turned to the leader of the guards. "Rise, Commander Titus. You took your sweet time finding me." His voice was a deep baritone, rough from disuse, but commanding. "We were misled by the Western Covens, sire," Titus said, standing up and quickly handing the king a long black trench coat. "We thought you were dead." The king pulled the coat on, buttoning it swiftly. He turned back to the porch. He walked slowly up the steps until he was standing inches from Ilara. Ilara was paralyzed. She was staring at King Killian Blackwood, the most dangerous man on the continent, and she had been feeding him rabbit scraps and scratching him behind the ears for 2 months. "You," Ilara squeaked, "you're a wolf." Killian finished a small, crooked smirk touching his lips. It was the first time she had seen a human expression on his face. "Yes." "I named you Shadow," she whispered, horrified. "I tried to feed you beans." Killian chuckled, the sound sending a shiver down her spine. He reached out his large, warm hand, cupping her frozen cheek. "And they were terrible beans, Ilara." His thumb brushed her skin. "But you kept me alive when my own brother poisoned me, trapped me in my wolf form, and left me for dead in these woods. You were the only one who showed me kindness." He stepped closer, his violet eyes locking onto hers. "You protected me when I was weak." He vowed, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl. "Now I will protect you. No one will ever harm you again. Not Damon. Not the world." He turned to Commander Titus. "Burn the cabin," Killian ordered. "What?" Ilara gasped. "You won't need it," Killian said, sweeping her up into his arms bridal style as if she weighed nothing. "You're coming home with me." To where? Elara asked, clutching the lapels of his coat. To the Obsidian Palace. Killian replied, carrying her toward the armored SUVs. You are the savior of the king, and Elara. Yes, you're my mate. The journey to the capital Valoria was a blur of high-speed travel and military checkpoints. Every time the convoy stopped, guards saluted with trembling fear. They weren't just saluting a king, they were saluting a ghost who had returned from the grave. Elara sat in the back of the lead SUV, wrapped in a blanket that smelled of cedar and rain Killian's scent. He hadn't let go of her hand for 3 hours. He was busy barking orders into a satellite phone, coordinating the arrest of traitors and conspirators. But his thumb constantly stroked the back of her hand, grounding her. When they finally arrived at the Obsidian Palace, Elara's breath hitched. It was a fortress carved directly into the side of a black granite mountain, illuminated by thousands of golden lights. It was beautiful, terrifying, and utterly overwhelming. "Welcome home," Killian murmured, helping her out of the car. But as soon as they entered the massive marble foyer, reality crashed in. Killian was swarmed. Generals' advisors and frantic staff surrounded him. "Sire, the council is in emergency session." "Sire, the borders in the east are failing." "Sire, your brother Prince Valerius has fled to the city." Killian's face hardened into a mask of cold fury. The tender man who had eaten beans with her on the floor was gone. The king had returned. He looked at Elara, conflict warring in his eyes. "Titus!" Killian barked. The giant commander stepped forward. "Yes, Alpha." "Take Elara to the royal suite. Place a double guard on the door. No one enters but the medical staff. No one." Killian squeezed Elara's hand one last time. "I have to clean up this mess. I will come to you as soon as I can." He strode away a storm of black coat and lethal energy, leaving Elara standing alone in a hall full of people who were staring at her. And the stares were not kind. She was wearing oversized men's clothes, her hair was windblown, and she still smelled of the wood stove in the dead zone. To the immaculate courtiers in their silk and velvet, she looked like a beggar. "This way, Miss Vance," Titus said gently, his large hand guiding her away from the whispering crowd. The royal suite was larger than her entire cabin. It had a balcony overlooking the city, a bed the size of a boat, and a bathroom filled with scented oils. But to Elara it felt like a cage, a very expensive cage. For 3 days she didn't see Killian. She saw doctors, an endless parade of them. They drew her blood, measured her vitals, and scanned her bones. They muttered among themselves, looking at her charts with confusion. "Is something wrong?" Elara asked on the 3rd day. The head physician, Dr. Aris, a grey-haired man with kind eyes, frowned at his clipboard. "Miss Vance, you are listed as a wolfless Omega, correct?" "Yes," she said, looking down at her hands. "I never shifted. My parents, they tested me. Said my wolf died in the womb." Dr. Aris tapped his pen against the chart. "That is what the Silver Creek records say. But your blood work is peculiar. You have incredibly high levels of latent lycanthropy energy. It's not that you don't have a wolf, Elara. It's that something is suppressing it, like a dam holding back a river." Before Elara could ask what he meant, the doors to the suite swung open. It wasn't Killian. A woman walked in. She was stunning tall with cascading blonde hair and eyes like ice. She wore a dress that looked like it cost more than the entire Silver Creek territory. This was Lady Seraphina, the daughter of the Northern Duke, and as the tabloids liked to speculate, the woman destined to be Killian's queen, before he vanished. She looked at the doctors, and they immediately bowed and scrambled out of the room, leaving Elara alone with her. Seraphina circled Elara like a shark. She sniffed the air and wrinkled her nose. "So," Serafina said, her voice dripping with faux sweetness, "this is the pet everyone is whispering about, the little Omega who found our lost king in the woods." "I'm not a pet," Ilara said, standing up straighter. "I'm his guest." Serafina laughed, a harsh, tinkling sound. "Guest, oh honey, don't delude yourself. Killian is grateful to you, surely. You saved his life. He feels a debt. But do not mistake gratitude for affection." She stepped closer, invading Ilara's personal space. "Killian is a lichen king. He needs a queen with a bloodline, with power, with a wolf. You are a genetic defect, a broken thing from a backwater pack." Serafina leaned in, whispering into Ilara's ear. "Enjoy the silk sheets while you can, little stray. Once the novelty wears off, he will send you away with a nice check. That's all you are to him. A charity case." Ilara felt the tears stinging her eyes. It was exactly what she had feared. She didn't belong here. She was the girl from the dead zone. "Get out!" a voice thundered from the doorway. Serafina jumped, her composure shattering. Killian stood there. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, his shirt unbuttoned at the collar. But his glare was focused entirely on Serafina. "Your Majesty, I was just—" Serafina stammered. "I heard what you were just doing," Killian growled, walking into the room. The air grew heavy with his aura. "You were insulting my mate." Serafina's face went white. "Mate, sire, surely you jest. She is an Omega. She has no wolf." "She has me," Killian snarled. "Get out. If I see you near her again, I will strip your father of his titles and banish your entire line to the wastelands." Serafina fled, sobbing. Killian slammed the door and locked it. The anger drained out of him the moment he looked at Ilara. He crossed the room in 2 strides and pulled her into his arms. "I'm sorry." He buried his face in her hair, inhaling deeply. "I'm so sorry I left you alone. The council, Valerius, it's a mess." Ilara pulled back slightly, looking up at him. "Is it true what she said? That I'm just a charity case?" Killian looked at her with intense seriousness. "Ilara, look at me. My wolf doesn't care about politics. He doesn't care about bloodlines. From the moment I woke up in your cabin and saw you offering me that rabbit meat, my wolf claimed you. You are the only thing keeping me sane." He kissed her forehead. "Tonight is the Blood Moon Ball," Killian said. "All the alphas from the continent are coming to swear fealty to me. It's a formal declaration of my return." "I can't go to that," Ilara panicked. "I don't know how to be a queen, Killian. I don't even have a dress." Killian smirked, walking over to the wardrobe. He threw the doors open. Inside were dozens of gowns, silks, satins, velvets in every color. "I had a feeling you'd say that," he said. "Wear red. It's the color of the royal house. Tonight we aren't just going to a party, Ilara. We are going to make a statement. And I heard a rumor that Alpha Damon Sterling is on the guest list." Ilara froze. "Damon is coming here." Killian's eyes flashed violet. "Yes, and I think it's time he learned exactly who he threw away." The grand ballroom of the Obsidian Palace was a spectacle of gold and crystal. Chandeliers the size of houses hung from the ceiling, casting a warm glow over 2,000 guests. The air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume champagne and power. Every Alpha Lunar and dignitary from the 7 territories was present. They were there to bend the knee to the resurrected king. Among them, standing near the buffet and looking uncomfortable in a rented tuxedo, was Alpha Damon Sterling. He was nervous. The invitation had been a command, not a request. He didn't know if the king knew about his illegal expansion into the dead zone. He was sweating. "Pull yourself together," his new beta, a brute named Jax, muttered. "We just bow. Give the gift and leave. I have a bad feeling, Damon hissed, downing a glass of champagne. Suddenly the trumpet sounded. The room went dead silent. Presenting His Royal Majesty, King Killian Blackwood, the herald announced. The massive double doors at the top of the grand staircase swung open. Killian stepped out. He wore a black military dress uniform with gold epaulets, a sword at his hip, and the crown of thorns on his head. He looked like a god of war. But the room didn't gasp at him. They gasped at the woman on his arm. Elara Vance. She wore a gown of deep blood-red velvet that hugged her curves and flared out at the bottom. The neckline was daring, showcasing her pale, flawless skin. Her hair was swept up in an intricate braid woven with rubies. She didn't look like a rejected Omega. She looked like a deity. Is that? Damon squinted his glass slipping from his fingers. No, it's impossible. Elara's heart was hammering against her ribs, but Killian's arm was a band of steel beneath hers. Head high, he whispered to her. You are above them. You are above all of them. They descended the stairs. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. Elara saw faces. She recognized people from Silver Creek who had spat on her, laughed at her. Now they were bowing so low their noses touched the floor. Killian led her to the thrones at the front of the room, but didn't sit. He stood scanning the crowd. My subjects! Killian's voice boomed without a microphone. I have returned! The traitors have been rooted out! Order is restored! He paused, his eyes locking onto a specific spot in the crowd. However, Killian continued, his voice dropping an octave. I have learned that during my absence, some alphas forgot the laws of our kind. They forgot that we protect the weak, that we cherish our own. Killian pointed a gloved finger. Alpha Damon Sterling, step forward. The crowd gasped and shuffled away, leaving Damon and his beta isolated in the center of the floor. Damon looked like he was about to vomit. He walked forward on shaky legs. Your Majesty, Damon bowed clumsily. I am honored. Are you? Killian descended the steps, pulling Elara with him. They stopped 3 feet from Damon. Damon finally looked up, and his eyes landed on Elara. Shock, confusion, and horror washed over his face. Elara, he whispered. What are you doing here? You're a servant. Killian laughed. It was a dark, terrifying sound. A servant? You think the woman wearing the royal rubies is a servant? Damon's eyes darted between them. But she is an Omega, a wolfless defect. I exiled her. She belongs to Silver Creek. You exiled her to the dead zone, Killian said softly. To die. But she didn't die, Damon. She found a pup. Do you remember the pup? Damon's face went grey. The memory of the black wolf in the cabin, the one that had decimated his beta, came rushing back. The wolf? Damon breathed. That was... I was poisoned, Killian explained to the silent room, his voice ringing out. Trapped in my animal form, hunted by my own brother. I was starving, freezing, and dying. And this woman you called a waste of resources, she starved herself to feed me. She fought for me. She is the only reason your king stands before you today. A murmur of awe rippled through the crowd. Killian stepped closer to Damon. You threw away a diamond because you were too stupid to see its worth, and now you stand in her shadow. Damon, in a moment of sheer panic and stupidity, tried to regain control. His ego couldn't handle the humiliation. She is still an Omega, sire. She is of my pack by law. I can reclaim her. He reached out to grab Elara's arm. Come here, you little snap. Before Damon's fingers could graze the velvet of her dress, Killian moved. But Elara moved too. Elara didn't flinch. She slapped Damon. It wasn't a weak slap. It was a full-force open palm strike that echoed through the silent ballroom. Damon's head snapped to the side. "I don't belong to you," Ilara said, her voice shaking but loud. "I don't belong to Silver Creek. You broke the bond when you threw me in the snow. I am not an Omega. I am the woman who saved the king, and you are nothing but a bully in a cheap suit." The room erupted in whispers. Damon snarled, his eyes flashing red, his wolf rising to the surface to attack her. Killian didn't just slap him. He grabbed Damon by the throat, lifted him 1 foot off the ground, and slammed him onto the marble floor. The impact cracked the stone. Killian placed his heavy boot on Damon's chest, applying pressure until Damon wheezed. "Titus!" Killian roared. "Sire!" Alpha Sterling is stripped of his rank, Killian announced, his voice cold as death. His lands are forfeit to the crown. He is to be taken to the iron mines. He will spend the rest of his life digging coal. Maybe there in the dark and the cold, he will learn what it feels like to be exiled. Damon screamed as the guards dragged him away. Killian turned to Ilara. The rage vanished from his eyes, replaced by adoration. He took her hand and kissed the knuckles she had used to slap Damon. That, Killian smiled, was incredibly hot. Ilara let out a breath she didn't know she was holding and smiled back. "I've wanted to do that for 5 years." "May I have this dance?" Killian asked, bowing to her. As they stepped onto the floor and the music began, Ilara felt like she had finally won. But as they spun, she caught a glimpse of something near the balcony doors. A man was watching them. He had the same black hair as Killian, but his eyes weren't violet. They were a sickly, glowing green. He held a glass of wine, raised it in a mock toast to Ilara, and then vanished into the shadows. Ilara stiffened. "What is it?" Killian asked, pulling her closer. "Your brother," Ilara whispered, a new fear gripping her heart. "Valerius? I think I just saw him." Killian spun around, but the balcony was empty. The music played on, but the celebration was over for Ilara. Damon was gone, but the real monster, the one who had poisoned the king in the first place, was still out there. And now he knew exactly who Ilara was. The days following the Blood Moon Ball were a paradox of luxury and terror. The palace was on high alert. Killian had doubled the guards, and Ilara was never left alone. Even when she slept, a member of the Obsidian Guard stood outside her door. Killian was consumed by the hunt for his brother. Valerius, the green-eyed prince, had vanished into the city's underbelly, but his presence hung over the palace like a toxic cloud. He wants the throne. Killian told Ilara one evening, pacing the length of their bedroom. He looked exhausted, his shirt unbuttoned, a glass of amber whiskey in his hand. "He tried to kill me with wolfsbane 3 months ago. Now that I'm back and stronger, he knows he can't beat me in a fair fight. He will try something underhanded." Ilara sat on the edge of the bed, watching him. He was at the ball, Killian. He looked confident. "That's what worries me," Killian muttered. He set the glass down and sat beside her, taking her hands. "I have to go to the northern border tomorrow. There are reports of Valerius gathering rogue wolves. I don't want to leave you." "I'll be safe here," Ilara assured him, squeezing his hands. "You have an army guarding me." "I'll be back in 2 days," Killian promised, kissing her deeply. "And when I return, I'm officially marking you as my queen. No more delays." Killian left at dawn. The first day passed without incident. Ilara spent her time in the library trying to learn the history of the Lycan Kingdom, but she couldn't shake a sense of unease. Dr. Aris's words kept echoing in her mind. It's like a dam holding back a river. On the evening of the second day, a maid Ilara hadn't seen before entered the suite. She was a young girl with trembling hands, carrying a silver tray. "Tea, my lady," the maid whispered, keeping her eyes on the floor. And a note from the king. Ilara's heart leapt. From Killian. She took the folded parchment. It was sealed with the royal crest. She tore it open. The handwriting was jagged, hurried. "Ilara Valerius has ambushed us at the pass. I am wounded. Come to the old chapel in the East Woods. Trust no one. Bring the medical kit." Panic, cold and sharp, pierced Ilara's chest. Killian was hurt. She didn't think. She didn't analyze the handwriting. She just reacted. "Where is the East Woods?" Ilara demanded, grabbing her cloak. I can show you the back way, my lady," the maid stammered. "The guards. The king said not to tell the guards. He said there are spies." It was a classic trap. If Ilara had grown up in court, she would have spotted it. But she had grown up in the snow, where honesty was the only currency. She trusted the seal. She followed the maid down a servant's stairwell, slipping past the changing of the guard. They exited through a scullery door into the biting cold of the night. A black sedan was waiting. "Get in," the maid said, her voice suddenly devoid of fear. Ilara hesitated. She looked at the driver. He turned his head. His eyes were glowing green. Ilara spun to run, but the maid was faster. She shoved a cloth soaked in something sweet and chemical against Ilara's nose and mouth. The world tilted. The last thing Ilara heard was the maid's voice, cold and mocking. "Sweet dreams, little Omega." When Ilara woke, she wasn't in a chapel. She was in a cavern. Damp stone walls rose up into darkness. Torches flickered, casting long, dancing shadows. She was bound to a stone chair by silver chains that burned her skin. Silver. It was lethal to wolves, but harmless to humans. It just felt hot and heavy to her. "She wakes," a smooth voice echoed. Ilara struggled against the chains. Standing in front of her, wearing a pristine white suit that clashed violently with the grime of the cave, was Prince Valerius. "Where is Killian?" Ilara rasped, her throat dry. "Oh, he's on his way." Valerius smiled, checking a pocket watch. "My brother is predictable. He tracks your scent like a bloodhound. I left a very clear trail." "Why are you doing this?" Ilara spat. "You want the throne, fight him for it." "I intend to," Valerius said, walking around her chair. "But first, I need to fix a mistake I made 22 years ago." He stopped behind her, leaning down to whisper in her ear. "You see, Ilara, you are a very special problem. Do you know who your parents were?" "They were nobodies," Ilara said. "They died in a car crash." "Lies," Valerius chuckled. "Your father was the alpha of the Crescent Moon Pack, a warrior. Your mother, she was a moon priestess, a direct descendant of the White Wolf lineage." Ilara froze. "What? They were powerful," Valerius continued, his voice hardening. "Too powerful. There was a prophecy that a child born of the Crescent and the priestess would have the power to unite all wolves and end the cycle of wars. That child would be the true queen." He walked back in front of her. "I couldn't have that. I wanted the war. War makes money. War makes power. So I killed your parents, and I found you a crying infant in a crib. I prepared to kill you too." He sighed theatrically. "But the nannies were coming. I didn't have time. So I placed a warlock's seal on you. I bound your wolf, your power, and your memories deep inside your core. I made you a wolfless defect, so no one would ever suspect who you really were. I dumped you at Silver Creek to be abused and forgotten." Ilara's mind reeled. The abuse, the rejection, the feeling of something missing inside her. It wasn't nature, it was him. But then, Valerius sneered, his face twisting into ugliness. You had to go and save my brother. You ruined everything. And now Killian is going to walk through that door, and I'm going to use you to kill him. As if on cue, a roar shook the cavern. The heavy iron doors at the entrance exploded inward. Killian stood there. He was in his human form, but he looked monstrous. His clothes were torn, his chest heaving, his eyes blazing with violet fire. Behind him lay the bodies of Valerius's rogue guards. "Valerius!" Killian screamed, his voice vibrating the stones. "Let her go!" Valerius didn't flinch. He pulled a jagged obsidian dagger from his jacket. He didn't hold it to Ilara's throat. He held it over a glowing rune carved into the floor. "One step closer, brother," Valerius warned, "and I activate the blood bane array. You know what that does?" Killian froze. "Good," Valerius smiled. "Now watch as I finish what I started 20 years ago." The standoff was suffocating. Killian stood 10 feet away, his muscles coiled, desperate to attack, but terrified of the glowing red runes on the floor. "The blood bane," Valerius explained to a confused Ilara, "links your life force to his. If I cut you, he bleeds. If I kill you, well." Valerius raised the dagger. "Any last words, Your Majesty?" Ilara looked at Killian. She saw the sheer agony in his eyes, not fear for himself, but for her. He had survived poison, exile, and war, but seeing her bound and threatened was breaking him. "I love you," Killian shouted, his voice cracking. "Ilara, I love you." Something inside Ilara snapped. It wasn't a mental snap. It was physical. It started in her chest, a heat so intense it felt like she had swallowed a star. The seal Valerius had placed on her, the dam Dr. Aris had spoken of, was cracking under the pressure of her terrified rage and her love for Killian. No, the voice in her head wasn't hers. It was ancient. It was primal. Valerius brought the dagger down, but it didn't hit skin. A shock wave of pure white energy exploded from Ilara's body. It threw Valerius backward. He crashed against the cavern wall, the dagger clattering away. The silver chains binding Ilara shattered like glass. "What?" Valerius gasped, struggling to stand. Ilara stood up, but she wasn't Ilara anymore. Her body contorted bones, reshaping with a sound like thunder. But there was no pain, only release. Blinding light filled the cave. When it faded, Ilara was gone. Standing in her place was a wolf. But not just any wolf. She was massive, nearly as large as Killian's wolf form. Her fur was pure, blinding white, shimmering like fresh snow under moonlight. Her eyes were not violet, and they were not human. They were liquid gold. The white wolf, the legendary apex predator of the myths. Killian stared in awe. Ilara. The white wolf threw her head back and let out a howl. It was a beautiful, terrifying sound that harmonized with the very earth of the cavern. Valerius looked at her, his green eyes wide with true terror for the first time. Impossible. The seal was unbreakable. The white wolf didn't speak. She lunged. She moved faster than the eye could follow, a blur of white light. Valerius tried to shift his bones, cracking, but he was too slow. Ilara slammed into him, pinning him to the ground with a paw the size of a dinner plate. She snarled in his face, her golden eyes burning with judgment. "Do it." Killian's voice came through the mind link. He had shifted too, his massive black wolf joining her side. Together they looked like yin and yang, night and day. Valerius whimpered. "Brother, mercy." The black wolf growled low, stepping closer, ready to rip Valerius's throat out. But the white wolf Ilara nudged Killian back. She stepped off Valerius. She didn't kill him. Instead, she looked at the glowing runes on the floor. She channeled her energy, and her paw began to glow. She slammed it onto the blood-bane array. The magic reversed. Valerius screamed as the red light turned white and shot back into his body. The seal he had placed on Ilara, the dark magic he had used for decades, recoiled. "Know my power!" Valerius shrieked as his body began to wither. The stolen youth, the stolen strength, it all evaporated. Within seconds, he wasn't a powerful prince. He was a frail, broken man, sobbing on the stone floor, stripped of his wolf entirely. Ilara had done something worse than kill him. She had made him what he hated most, wolfless. She turned to Killian. The white wolf lowered her head and licked the blood from his muzzle. Killian nuzzled her neck, his tail wagging slightly. The king had found his queen. 3 years later. The winter in Valoria was harsh, but inside the obsidian palace it was warm. Ilara sat by the fireplace in the royal nursery. She wasn't wearing rags anymore. She wore a simple white dress, her hair loose and healthy. On the rug in front of her, 3 pups were wrestling. 2 were jet black like their father. 1 was pure white like her mother. "Careful, Titan," Ilara scolded gently as one of the black pups bit his sister's ear a little too hard. The door opened and King Killian walked in. He looked different. The dark circles were gone, the constant tension in his shoulders replaced by a calm strength. He was the ruler of a united continent, the king who had brought peace. But in this room, he was just Dad. He dropped to his knees, and the pups immediately abandoned their fight to tackle him. He laughed a deep, joyous sound as they licked his face. He looked up at Ilara over the pile of fur. His violet eyes softened. "Thinking about the cabin?" he asked, reading her mind as he always did. "I was thinking about the rabbit." Ilara smiled, reaching out to stroke the white pup who had waddled over to her. "And how a rejected girl in the dead zone ended up with all of this." Killian stood up, shaking off the 2 black pups, and walked over to her. He kissed her deeply. "You didn't just end up with it, Ilara," he whispered against her lips. "You earned it. You are the White Queen, and I am just the stray you fed." Ilara laughed and rested her head on his shoulder, watching the snow fall outside the window. It was the same snow that had almost killed them, but now it just looked beautiful. They were home, and that is the story of Ilara and Killian. From a frozen cabin in the dead zone to the throne of the Lycan Kingdom, Ilara proved that being rejected doesn't mean you're worthless. It just means you haven't found your true pack yet. And let's be honest, seeing Valerius lose his wolf and end up powerless, that was the ultimate instant karma we all needed. What did you think of Ilara's transformation? Did you guess she was the white wolf, or did you think she was just a regular human? Let me know in the comments below. If you want a part 2 about their pups growing up, type white wolf in the comments. So I know you're interested. Don't forget to hit that like button if you enjoyed the story. It really helps the channel grow. And subscribe with the notification bell turned on so you never miss a daily dose of drama, romance, and werewolf twists. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.